All right, everyone, thank you for joining us for another Armchair Traveler series. My name is Brandon Wilkes. Again, a big thanks to Cindy Bucks and Russ White for putting this series on this year, just as last year. It's been tremendous so far. We really appreciate everyone who's given a presentation, and we have several more going on. I think after Cindy comes back, but I'll let her talk a little bit more about that. If anyone, a few admin notes before we get started. Everyone is set to mute as they come in, so please leave this muted for the presentation. At the very end, you can unmute and ask questions. If you have questions you want to type in the chat, go ahead and type away, and those will be addressed at the very end. If you have missed the other Armchair Traveler series, those are posted on the website, our Haines library.org. And also on our YouTube channel. You can check those out just as this one will be. So if you know someone who wanted to be here but couldn't, this will get posted sometime in the next week on our website as well. And we look forward to the rest of the presentations. And just a quick note, this upcoming next week for library programs, Mardell Gunn has put together a nice program for the Southeast Alaska Farmer Summit, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday afternoons, and actually Saturday morning now. We're going to be convening at the library to join in some sessions about farming and gardening in Southeast Alaska, everything from slug control and livestock raising, all kinds of really fun stuff. I know my wife's going to be there, so hopefully you will join us. I should have the schedule up on our Facebook page, and Mardell is also handing out left and right, and of course we have the flyer up at the library. So hopefully you'll join us for that. It should be really a whole lot of fun and very informative. So hopefully we'll see you there. And with that, I believe that is all my admin notes. So I look forward to seeing this, and I hope you guys enjoy your evening, enjoy the show, and I will kick it on over to Cindy.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I hope everybody's got a nice cup of tea or hot cocoa and sitting in your nice comfy chairs while we listen to Deborah Marshall give her talk tonight. I want to tell you about the other talks coming up next week. We have Michael Belize, who moved to town a few years ago, and he's going to give a talk about a trek in Tibet. That's next Wednesday. And then in a month after that, March 22nd, we have Russell Heath, who has ties to the community but now lives in Maine. He is going to give a talk about sailing around the world. And then on April 3rd, we're going to have Carol Van Hemert, who was going to give the talk last week, but got canceled because the town hall was scheduled on top of it, and people, can't be in two places at once. So her talk about her 4,000-mile trip from basically Bellingham to Kotzebue by rowboat and skis and pack raft and everything, that will be April 3rd, and that is a Monday. Anyway, I will now introduce Deborah Marshall. One of the really cool things I like about Haines is you get to know people, and like Deborah, I know that she's a great cook and a great friend, and she hikes, and I know her in that fashion. But then, like other people, then I find out more about people's background, their backstory, and I'm always fascinated because people in Haines are pretty fun, interesting people who have done all sorts of cool, crazy stuff. So I always ask people to send me a bio, and Deborah sent me one, and I learned all sorts of new stuff about her that I didn't know. And I love learning these things. So I'm going to share some of these things with all of you. She received her Bachelor's of Arts degree from Williams College in June of '74, and then completed her master's in public administration at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government in 1999. Then she skippered a 26-foot Nordic tug powerboat, some 8,000 miles along the coastal islands between Seattle and Glacier Bay for 7 years. She has a daughter, and she now has a grandson. Her daughter works for Burning Man, and her grandson doesn't have a job yet. Most of us who know Deborah know that she ran the Fiddlehead. She was one of the 3 founders and ran it for 20 years. They were 35 year-round employees at some point, and it earned all sorts of, it was a pretty famous place. It was called the best eatery in Alaska, according to the New York Times. She's one of the 4 authors of the Fiddlehead Cookbook, which is still a pretty cool thing. It's in its 20th edition. After that, she was director of Alaska InvestNet, which was a nonprofit helping helping entrepreneurship in Alaska. And she's, does all sorts of other community stuff. She was the founder of Southeast Alaska's first community land trust. She was on the board of directors of the Alaska Pacific Bank, a local bank. She was chair of Southeast Alaska State Fair for 10 years. She's the treasurer of LCC Broadcasting, KHNS, and she raises money for a scholarship for a historically Black college, Johnson C. Smith in North Carolina. And her great-great-grandmother was put up the seed money for this scholarship. And Deborah has taken upon herself to continue the family tradition and works hard at raising money. So she's a pretty cool, interesting person and has done all sorts of great things for the world as well. And now we get to listen to one of her adventures. So thank you, Deborah. I'll hand it over to you now.
Okay, well, thank you, Cindy. And I'm just going to start. I'm going to turn off the video when I go into this, but I want to just say that I have always found it a lot easier to jump into the next adventure than to chronicle the last one. So Cindy asked me to do this talk on the Camino last winter, and it involved going back to pre-digital photographs and handwritten journals and my wonderful collection of maps. And I'm very grateful because it is time to look back at, at what happened 18 years ago. It's been, I'm nervous because PowerPoint's new to me, and luckily Dennis Geeson, thank you. I don't think I would be here if he weren't sitting next to me. So I'm going to go forward with my motley slideshow. And my daughter said, my generation would just pull the pictures off the internet, Mom. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take pictures of old snapshots and see what we can do. So with that, I'm going to talk about walking across Spain in 2005. And I think we'll turn off the video, which I think we do right here. Nope. Okay, we do someplace else.
Sorry, I gotta stick my mug in there. Uh-oh, where did it go?
Got you covered.
Where'd it go?
I turned it off for you.
Oh, okay, great.
Oh,
Okay, great.
good.
Perfect. Okay, so off we go. And of course, Haines is always, as Cindy said, it's a difficult audience because everybody out there has done incredible things. So this is a walk across Spain, and here we go. I had not ever traveled alone or done anything like this before this trip. It's October of 2005. I had my hip replaced the year before and basically was very grateful that I could walk. And so I got it in my head because a couple of friends of mine from Juneau, Pat White and Dixie Belcher, had done this in 2002. And it sounded like something I should jump in and do. I have a slide up here of the ancient pilgrim. So the Camino is an ancient Roman road, 2,000 years old, and the Catholics took it over about 1,000 years ago. And this is what a pilgrim looked like in the Middle Ages, with a staff and a scallop shell and a small side pack and a coat that became a sleeping bag. And this is a modern pilgrim. Now, this modern pilgrim is a chichaco because, as I learned on the way, you need a much lighter backpack. The Europeans say 10% of your body weight, and this is easily twice that. But now that I have actually gone back and walked more Caminos with women friends over time, my pack has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. I realized when I started looking into my box of Camino stuff that actually after this first Camino, I went back and walked 4 more with women friends, an additional 800 kilometers. And this is what happens. You come home with sore feet and great spirits, and you want to go back and do it again. So tonight we'll talk about Roncesvalles. You can see it here, to Santiago de Compostela. But as the years went by, I did Porto North and also started in Lourdes, Biarritz, and Vézelay, all in France, where the food is really good. So yeah, October of 2005, I'm unemployed for the first time in 30 years. I've got a new hip, and I am on my way to Spain. What did I do to prepare? Well, I read a book. And it's a great book. In fact, whether or not you want to do the Camino, I highly recommend this book. It's funny. It's really informative. This guy did it in the late 90s, and it's a great read. I didn't walk or ride bikes, 20 Ks a day to prep. But I did buy a new pair of solo hiking boots, which, had never been used before. And I did borrow a pack from Russell Heath, whom I had just started to date. And the idea with the Camino is you're supposed to start from home. And I'd like to say that I walked to the ferry terminal, but I haven't done that yet, but I will one day. But here I am getting ready to go all the way to Spain in October of 2005. And this is what it looks like, a little more close up, one of my older maps. I was told by Dixie Belcher to bring a clamshell, and that's the sign of the way, the sign of the pilgrimage. And why the clamshell? Well, it's a pagan fertility symbol. It's the birth of Venus. It's a baptismal. The Catholics use it to, pour the little water over the babies. And really, I think the way 1,000 years ago that the clamshell started out as the sign of the way was that the pilgrims would walk all the way to Santiago in Galicia and pick up a clamshell and bring it back as a symbol that they had walked the way. Today, we carry a clamshell on our backpack as a sign of a pilgrim, and we follow the signs like this one all the way across Spain. And it has definitely become the sign of the way. So I had one on my backpack, and my very first guide happened to be a gentleman I sat next to on the airplane on my way from Seattle to Vancouver, and then to Spain. And well, Ibar turned out to be a Basque, his French name, Jean-Pierre. His home port, where he was born and raised, was Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. And he noticed the scallop shell on my pack, and he said, "Oh, you're a pilgrim. You're going to walk the Camino." And to which I, naively said yes. And he was great. He had lots of advice. He said, most people train for the Camino, and I sort of gulped and said, okay, I'm going to do as well as I can. And he told me I should start in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. I'd planned to start over here in Roncesvalles. He left me in the Vancouver airport with the Basque advice. He said, think like a Basque when it's raining and no huts are open and my feet is sore and there's no hot soup. And that piece of advice came in very handy. The other piece of advice I had from a veteran traveler was, you're never alone, even when you're traveling alone. And that proved to be very true. So off I went. I land in Barcelona. I bus to Pamplona. I take a van to Roncesvalles. It's now dark. And I hop in a van with a couple, about a half a dozen other people who were starting the Camino, 2 American girls, and they're all planning to start in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. So I say, okay, and I jump aboard, and we're headed for Compostelle, Santiago de Compostelle, the stars, because we're walking due west, like the Milky Way. Okay, these are the maps that I cut out of a Lonely Planet guidebook to save weight. And this is what my maps look like. But as I was to discover, every single country has their own guidebook. The Italians have, clamshells for the good food, and the Germans measure everything to the 10th of a kilometer. But the best one that I did not have when I did this the first time is this one, the Michelin Guide, which doesn't weigh very much and definitely gives you a lot of information. So here you see what I've taken on by starting in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port instead of Roncesvalles. It's a 27K day with 2,500 feet elevation, and gulp, here we go. And we find a little albergue in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and we get our pilgrim's passport. So what you get is a credential when you start, and you get the information over here, the date, your name, and it does have a map of the Camino in it in case you need another one. And you get stamped at every single town or hostel that you stay at. And this is going to be your proof when you get to Santiago that you've actually walked over 100 kilometers, so your sins will be forgiven, and that you haven't driven or ridden a donkey, all of the things that you're tempted to do. So we picked those up in Saint Jean-Pied-de-Port, and here's my information. Here's my advice for pilgrims for my first day on the Camino. Note down here, be especially careful during the pigeon shooting season, September through October, when they are burning off the grass. So it's October, and I end up walking this day with the pigeon hunters, the Basque pigeon hunters, who are all stopping to drink port. And my American girls are right here. This is the last I saw of them. Dawn is breaking and they are off, and I never see them again for the entire day. I'm on my own. And this is what it looks like to hike that pass in the Pyrenees that is headed to Roncesvalles. So I don't have a lot of Spanish. It's my first trip to Spain. And, I'm off. The grand adventure. This is the Roncesvalles hostel. So this is the very first hostel that I end up in Spain. Here's my clamshell. Here's the American girls. And again, this is the last time I'm going to see them for a while. I did see them that night. And I get in after dark and get a little something to eat. And in the morning, they boot you out of the hostels. So you have to be up and out by 8 o'clock, and it's getting darker in the fall in Spain. I had a really hard time getting ready. These guys, these kids are like, they just slide out of their sleeping bags and they're on the trail. Not me. I needed time and I needed light. And so I was behind from the beginning. This is a rainy day with a bunch of pilgrims, and you can see Santiago is still a long ways away. So it was a rainy day that day. I have picked up some pictures from my other Caminos because I was short on pictures from 2005. But these are rainy days on the Camino, which is fine until you lose your way. Here is a Basque sign. We're in Basque country, and Basque is the oldest language in Europe with unknown origins. Here's our little yellow arrow. This is all the way across Spain. We're following the yellow arrow. This picture here is one of my favorite Camino pictures because this is what it feels like. You're walking, into a little bit of light at the end of the way, and there may or may not be another pilgrim ahead of you. So that very first day out of Roncesvalles, I get lost, and the day looks like this. I walk right past Zubiri, where I'm supposed to have dinner and meet my new friends. I have a 6 kilometer out of the way back and forth to come back on a freeway in the dark. But I do find my way back to the hostel in Zubiri, but it was scary. And it was enough to get my attention that I needed to respect the fact that walking with others was the way to go. This is a lifelong lesson for me. Here is what it looks like at the end of the day in a hostel. You're being fed, sometimes by a singing monk. So from then on, I tried to walk with people, and I met people. Enrique and Marta were my very first buddies. So this is Marta and Nuria. The Spaniards walk the Camino a week at a time. They take a week off of work and they walk for a week, and they party along the way because they know they don't really have to go 500 miles, and they're really fun. And so I did end up walking with Spaniards most of the way. And these guys are the same age as my daughter, and we shared life stories, because when you're walking 20 to 30 Ks a day with another person, the talking makes the Ks go by and you really get to know each other. So here we're still in Basque country. It's hot peppers, and we are going to get to Pamplona, our first big town, the running of the bulls. Hemingway, fabulous town. And when you're in a town on the Camino, you have to look for the shell on the street like this. You have to look down instead of up, because there will be your clamshell pointing you the way to the albergue. A lot of Basque energy in Pamplona. These are Basque demonstrations. we were told to be a little bit careful. I'm fascinated by the Basque culture, and so that's Pamplona. The other great thing about a city on the way is good food. So here's some tapas. We worshipped at the feet of the coffee goddess from the beginning. I learned one of my first big Camino lessons was never walk past an open coffee bar. Always stop for coffee. Now we've made it through Pamplona. Now this is Marta and I, and this is my shell. You see, we're continuing. It hasn't broken. And this is a big hill mountain right after Pamplona. And we're walking together, and it's pretty fabulous. Although what happens is people get blisters. And Pat White told me before I left, she gave me the one piece of advice. She said, anoint your feet every morning with A&D ointment and wear 2 pairs of socks. And I did that. I brought enough socks that I could always have a clean pair and be washing a pair. And she was my therapist, and I listened to her. What do you know? And I never got a blister, which is really unusual. I believe in this stuff, and on every Camino, I've anointed my feet with A&D ointment every morning. Well, this guy, Stefan, a 20-year-old, had been out the entire morning for blisters. He'd been in a hospital in Pamplona because his blisters were so bad. And we walked together to Unati on the way out of Pamplona. And he had just, been all bandaged up, and we had this great walk and talk. And this is one of my best Camino meals ever. He produced olives and sardines and cheese and bread, and we ate this fabulous picnic at Unati in the sunshine. And we were on our way. That was about a 4K out of the way, but Unati is in Basque, it means today's, let's see, what does it mean? Anyway, it's a Basque word, and it's a Knight of Templar chapel with perfect acoustics. And I was so interested that on a Camino later on, in October of 2010, I came back, and on 10/10/10, I actually stayed here in the upstairs of this amazing hostel at Unati, and we witnessed a wedding that was being conducted in the Knights of Templar Chapel. You run into many things like this on the Camino. 10/10/10. And I was very moved by it. We also sang when nobody was in there, and really enjoyed the stay. And I put this slide in because this is a confessional, and you all probably know what a Catholic confessional normally looks like. This is in a iglesia for Mary Magdalene. But it was just so profound. I mean, this was these 2 chairs. So you're sitting there on equal footing with the person who's listening to your confession instead of somebody hiding in a booth. Okay, so after Unati, we are back on the way. And we're hitting the Roman bridges. And this is part of, as I said, it's a 2,000-year-old Roman way, walking all the way to Finisterre, which means end of the earth, on the coast of Spain. The way is beautiful. It is really, you're really walking history. First it was Charlemagne's trail and the Song of Roland, and the Basque take responsibility for killing Roland, unlike the French, say the Moors did. But there's so much history, and in that book by Jack Hitt, he talks about all this fabulous history along the way. Here are my buddies. Now this is Christina over here, and this is Nuria. And Christina is a young Spanish woman who's unemployed, and she's walking with an old-fashioned flip phone, and she's waiting for her employer to call her and tell her she's hired. And she doesn't know how long she's going to get to walk. She thinks maybe she will be taken off the trail at any day. So we have become walking buddies. And this is what it can feel like on a good day, skipping along and finding the clamshell, as we need to do for not to get lost. lots of livestock, pigs and horses and cows. This is a picture of a French farmer actually who put us back on our way when we were lost, that I wanted to include because it has, it is really fabulous. Heather talked about hospice being modeled after the Camino with the kindness of strangers. And there's so much kindness of strangers, feeding you, rubbing your feet, and helping you get back on the trail. So here's a couple of peregrinas figuring out where they are. We're in wine country now, and so we can pick grapes. I love being in Spain in harvest season because there's foraging to be done. Keep your spirits up. And we're walking, continuing to walk and walk. And here I am with having to say goodbye to my new friends. So that's Enrique, the psychiatrist, his daughter, Marta, and they are headed back to Barcelona. And I am going to continue on with Nuria and Christina. I was raised by a World War II Navy pilot, and our family vacations were very regimented. We knew exactly where we were going to be, practically at every hour of the day. And one of the major big lessons about the Camino is you do not know where you're going to spend the night and what kind of digs you're going to have. I mean, are you going to have a German clean hostel with a separate bunk room for men and women? Are you going to have a hostel like this that's sort of carved out of stone with bunks piled in and lots of caminos? Lots of pilgrims. So it's kind of fabulous. And you could get a beatific monk who's making you garlic soup and singing, and you can get somebody who's really sick of the pilgrims, and the tea is cold or non-existent. So it's a crapshoot, and staying in the hostels was fabulous. Now this is my bed in the hostel. This is me trying to organize myself, still with way too much stuff. I mailed stuff back in Pamplona. I'm going to mail stuff again in Ponferrada. And as I said, on my future Caminos, I took less. But here you can see Don Quixote, and this was Russell's idea. And this is a kilo of a book. I'm really glad I have this book because I can read it late at night when the pilgrims are snoring and I can't sleep. But it was weight, and I was laughed at by my fellow pilgrims. However, the Spaniards have, this is required reading in Spain, like Shakespeare is for us, for the juniors and seniors in high school. And so it was kind of a great place to start a conversation. Not to mention, Don Quixote is, quixotic Spanish culture, and funny and fabulous and a great read. So thank you, Russell, for that. I did carry it all the way, and it came back to Haines. I didn't tear the pages out and burn them, which is another Camino trick. Okay, so here we are. I have to say goodbye to these guys, and it's actually very sad. We sang, we cried, and we said goodbye to the Barcelonians, and Nuria and I kept walking, because walking is what we're doing. Ultrea, a little bit of Wood's inspiration. Buen camino, we say to everybody. So now, in the middle of the Camino, we are going to hit the really difficult part. It's long. It's at least a week of this kind of terrain. We're out of the mountains. It's straight. It parallels a freeway for a long ways. It's not as interesting. The hostels are not as nice. The food is bad. And you have to keep your spirits up, and you just have to keep on walking. And I have an entry in my journal from the halfway point, in which I say, I have had it with this country. The smoke, the late dinners, the skanky showers. I stand on top of my clothes and they get washed while I shower and avoid athlete's foot, waiting for the internet, sharing everything: food, shoes, second skin, clothes, weather, space, meals. I'm sick of iceberg lettuce, ensalada mixta, and French fries, and the fear of bed bugs. Now, you can have a cute pilgrim who can cheer up your day. So there we are. He's French, and I don't remember his name. But it was hard in the middle way. and you just, had to keep on going. Of course, you walk through these amazing towns and you hope for good coffee. Here's the shells. I mean, really, you see the shells on the way in all kinds of different, they put this, in their garden bed to keep the pilgrims on their way. So we're headed for Lyon. Lyon is where I've decided I'm going to have a rest day. But before we get there, we walk 30 kilometers in countries kind of like that, in rain, and we get to a place where we are supposed to have a bed, and there's not only no room at there, and there's no inn, and it's getting dark, and the four of us, this is Christina, and I don't know the others that well, we try to call a taxi, we try to cheat, and we can't get a taxi, and so we're forced to walk another 10 kilometers in the dark to the next place where there's a place to sleep. And the stars came out and we sang and we turned it into an amazing, this is what it felt like. Time on, I threw in these grave sites of pilgrims, because that day, it was like we felt like we were going to expire. People do expire on the Camino, usually in August, when it's hot, and you do pass some graves like this. But anyway, we did end up in a hostel. We were taken care of. We were taken in, and we'd done something. We'd done a 40K day, and that was the most we ever did. This is what I was talking about, the ensalada mixta, and this is a pilgrim meal. So what they do is, pilgrims are hungry about 6 and the Spaniards aren't eating until 8. And so they have something they call a pilgrim meal. And we got lots of this, French fries and fried eggs. And you never knew, but often this was what it was. But if you were in camaraderie, which we are here, and it's calories to get you going for the next day, you're grateful, and you're grateful for your bunk with your book to read. Continuing to walk, I walked for days on the question of what is love. Have lots of entries in my journal on that. It's really powerful when your work is walking and you have no other responsibilities. You don't have chores, you don't have to pay bills, you don't have to get in a car, you're not going to work, you're not taking care of kids, and you can think a lot. I mean, the solitude is luminous. And once in a while you pass a little rock like this where someone's asking you a good question. People on the Camino are there for all different reasons. Whoops. And I think I'm going to go back to this. And I'm going to throw this in right now. That there's a document in Mosavaya that declares the Camino's doors are open to all, well and ill, not only to Catholics, but to pagans, Jews and heretics, the idler and the vagabond, and to put it shortly, the good and the wicked. And you meet all kinds on the trail from every different persuasion. And what we had in common was some kind of life change and walking through loss or sorrow or change of some kind. Death, end of relationship, or potential end of relationship, or beginning of relationship, who knows? But it was powerful, the conversation. And here we are. Lyon is coming up, and I was the laughing stock of the Europeans because I had a big water bottle, and they kept telling me, you're going to have a fuente, you will have a place to fill your water bottle. So now I take a very small water bottle, plastic and light, but you know how we are in Alaska, we need big water bottles. So that's what I had in the beginning. So we're walking more Roman roads, continuing the path. And I have to admit that, how did we keep our spirits up? These are the Italian brothers. So glad I found this picture. So this was still on the way into Lyon, and these are the Italian brothers. I only saw them once on the way, and they made us the best spaghetti dinner at a hostel. They saved the day. It was fabulous. And then they were often, you get up in the morning and you walk, and you kind of walk at the pace of whoever else is walking, and you don't always see each other again. So they were great. This is a series of what cheers you up on the Camino. So chocolate and cookies. and sunshine. And finding a husky dog with my shell. This was at an old 1,000-year-old monastery, and here was this fabulous husky. I love huskies. There's one in the other room right now. And you hang out on, pose on the statues that you might find in the towns. And finally, we make it to Lyon. And Lyon is over halfway. And we are, that's where I got a hotel for the first time. And it was fantastic. Had 2 nights in a hotel, and I found the American girls again. So it's the tortoise and the hare. They go fast, they get blisters, they slow down, you bump into them again. They came to see me in my hotel room because they were still in a hostel. It was fabulous. I had my first bagno privata in 2.5 weeks. I had hot running water and a towel and a shower by myself. And there's my shell to prove I was there. It was a great rest. And I had a couple letters from Russell and brand new second skin and more A&D ointment. And I was ready to pick up and go the next morning. And here is another one of my favorite pictures of the Camino. There we all are in the city looking at the shell. Because once you're in a city, you have to get out of a city without taking a cab or public transportation, and you're on foot, and it's easy to get lost. So once again, the shells showed us the way. So now we are getting back up into the mountains, and we're heading for Astorga and Galicia, and we're going to have more terrain, but it's also going to be prettier and greener. Here's a couple slides. These are what the locals are doing when you're walking through their villages. They're looking at you. Sometimes more friendly than others. The women tend to be at church at 5 o'clock mass. The men are always in the bars. And this Camino, Spain still allowed smoking in the bars. So the bars were really smoky. And that's where most of the men were. And here's where the women are sitting and watching you walk by, clicking your sticks. And, who knows, were we friend or foe, but we were walking through their towns and drinking their coffee and worshiping the coffee bar. And without it, we would never have made our way across Spain.
Oh.
By now, you can see that the average age of my traveling companions is about half of mine. They are my daughter's age, and yeah, so be it. Here's the yellow arrow, and here's a nice pilgrim, staff keeping us on our way. So now we're going to head up to Astorga, which is a really fun Gaudi town. It has a couple of Gaudi buildings, and here's a picture of one. And it's a lovely town. So we are getting closer. We can smell Santiago. And by now I am walking with Christina, and she still hasn't been called. She has not been called to work. And I'm getting tired, as you can see in this picture. And here we are. Here's Christina, and here's Christina here, and here is me. It's getting colder because we're going into the mountains. Here's the shell. So why Santiago? Why St. James? We've got a little bit of St. James over here. St. James was apparently Jesus's first cousin. He was beheaded early on, like in AD 54 or something. And miraculously, his remains showed up in Galicia, in northwestern Spain. A pilgrim, Palejo, found the remains, and this was well timed because the Catholics needed relics to compete with Rome and Jerusalem, and so they found some of his bones and built the Cathedral of St. James, which is the endpoint of the Camino de Santiago, and encouraged people to walk across Spain because the Moors had taken over southern Spain, and they were hoping to, take Spain, and upwards of 300,000 pilgrims walked the Camino in the early days. And then there was, then it completely dropped off. So in my day, there were 100,000 in 2005, and we're back up to 300,000 now. So we're back up to the ancient pilgrimage numbers. So yes, her boss is not called. We are walking together. We are finding wonderful signs like this. And Santiago is getting closer. This is Cruz de Ferro, and what you do is you bring a rock from where you live. So I dropped a rock from Haines on Cruz de Ferro. It's a waypoint, and you can see how many pilgrims have dropped rocks at Cruz de Ferro. That was after Astorga. And we continue walking. Again, I put this favorite. I love these. I love the walkers, with walking on the trail. That is the meditation. And I'm tired. I'm worn out and I'm tired, and I have left things behind. I've left a camp towel behind, underwear. I'm starting to lose it. I can't remember my Spanish at night. And what happened to the American girls? They're not tired. They're rocking through it and having a lot of fun along the way. Luckily, I'm about to meet Katya in Ponferrada. Katya came by train and met me here, and my Camino experience immediately was upgraded to hotels with Katya, which I was ready for. I was wearing out, and here's my shell and the big shell, and a new walking partner. Katya walked with Christina and I on the way, and jumped in and enjoyed the Camino camaraderie. We are going to walk up Osebrero, and thanks to Katya, she took Christina and my packs that day and went by taxi while we did this lovely hike, which was up and up and up and up, and you end up practically in snow at the top. But because we didn't have to carry our packs that day, we had so much fun. This is Christina getting the chestnuts from the tree. She loved the chestnuts. And this is one of the many boys who were flirting with Christina. She had Javi and Pedro and Eduardo, and I can't remember all their names, who were flirting with Christina along the way, who was about 28 years old and convinced she was going to be an old maid because she wasn't married yet. And we had many heart-to-heart conversations about this. And we became very close. Here's a note she wrote me. We'll wait for you in the next bar that we can find. She's hiking with the boys. We're sharing the earbuds here. You can see in this picture. And I'm trying to connect for Café con Leche because we're getting very close to Santiago. And we had this desire to walk into Santiago together, but of course I'm a little slower. This is an epic dinner. You can see Katya here, myself, Christina, Pedro, I don't remember these guys' names, that might be Javi, and this is Roland the Bavarian. So of all the boys that have been drinking wine with Christina at night while I'm reading Don Quixote in my bunk, this is the one who had caught her fancy and whose fancy she had caught. We're about 2 nights out of Santiago right now, maybe 3. And so more will be revealed. We are, okay, wait. So here we are. We make the decision. Katya is going to head on in and find us a hotel room. Thank you, Katya. And Christina and I are going to walk our final day. So we spend our last night in a cement, antiseptic, and not very nice hostel. And we head for Santiago. And in my nautical way, I had hoped to be in Santiago on Thanksgiving Day, and indeed American Thanksgiving Day. We walked into Santiago. We stayed in a place where it would only take us about 4 hours. And we had this fabulous walk into Santiago, Christina and I, and we were doing dreams and gratitude. And we would each say something we were grateful for, and each say a dream we had for our future. And we come around the corner in Santiago. This is the cathedral over here on the left. And who is in the courtyard waiting for Christina but Roland from Bavaria? And that was the last I saw of Christina until we all had dinner that night. And we are going to go to Pilgrim's Mass, which is what you do when you get to Santiago. There's a Mass at noon. You drop your backpacks and you join a whole passel of people who you've been walking across Spain with. So there were the Italian brothers, and there were the American girls, and there were people that we had leapfrogged across the country with for a month in the cathedral. This is the Bota Fumiero, which is the big swinging incense holder. Here are the priests blessing the pilgrims. Here we are feeling blessed to be in Santiago after all those days and all that walking and all those conversations. It's pretty impressive. The remains of Santiago are supposed to be in here. Santiago, by the way, is a morph, of James, St. James. And theoretically, for 1,000 years, people have been rubbing the back of St. James, his shoulders. And there is one of my favorite pilgrims, and she is getting blessed by the remains of St. James. What do you do when you get to the end of a Camino? Some people keep walking because they're not ready to stop. I was ready to stop. You take your picture in front of the cathedral and you get your Compostelle. So this is, you bring your credential in to the Catholic priest and in the sanctuary, and he gives you a Compostelle, which is your diploma. I have walked the Camino, and here I am, 24 November. So from October 22nd to November 24th, I think 825 kilometers, not counting getting lost. Here I am, and that is with me today. And here's a recap. We're over here, but Finisterre is here, Cape Finisterre. It's about another 3-day walk to get to the end of the earth. And I'm not into that, but it turns out that Roland and Christina decide that they're going to keep walking. And so after a good pulpo, octopus Thanksgiving dinner, Katya and I explore Santiago, and Christina keeps walking. This is a brouhaha. Santiago is a city which has a history of witch energy, very fun. There was an original Frida Kahlo on display. We saw, what do you do at the end of Camino? You buy a new outfit, you weigh 10 pounds less, you feel lighter than air, and you get up and you don't have to keep walking. It's a weird feeling. You get your toes done. You toast to a Camino walked. And this is what Christina did. Finisterre, end of the earth. Here is what it looks like. On my right is a picture of Roland and Christina 17 years later. They got married, they moved to Bavaria, they are living happily ever after. And it makes me cry. It was a beautiful thing. It was a relationship that happened on the Camino, and fabulous. So, one never knows. Here I am. I got to Finisterre later on, just to see what it was like at the end of the earth. And and at the end of a Camino, you bring your boots back to Haines. You put your shell in the display case to tell your grandson about someday. And you go back to Barcelona for another Camino, and you meet up with Enrique and Marta and Marta, and Nuria and Christina. And here we are having dinner in Barcelona with friends for life from that first week on the Camino. And also you take other friends walking. Jen and I did Portugal, and Nancy and I did France, and we all took the time to smell the roses on our Caminos. And you continue to find your yellow arrows. So I'll just conclude to say that I, after that introduction by Cindy, I was basically dropping out. I was unemployed and didn't know what was next. And thanks in no small part to the Camino, I reorganized my life. My Hello Pilgrim was moving to Haines and becoming a tour guide for the next 12 years. And that's the whole, sometimes we have to go back we have to go out to come back and to see the beginning with new eyes. So I, by 2006, had shut the door on all that previous life and moved to Haines, and I have no regrets. So thank you all for listening, and see if you've got any questions. So now what do we do? Oh, we start the video.
Well, thank you, Deborah. That was pretty amazing. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. And if you don't feel like talking on there, you can always chat in the chat and ask away. That was a really, really good presentation. I really appreciate that.
Hey, Deb, I have a question about, it's surprising to me that you can get lost because so many people do it. Tell me a little bit more about, were there divergent trails, or, I mean, I understand in a city, but did you have to have a map to follow the trail? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. No. Well, when I went, there weren't any actual trail maps. They basically show you the number of kilometers and the town you're shooting for. I mean, now there's 300,000 people doing it every year, so I imagine it's more well marked. But I got lost in the woods, and yes, what would happen would be I would be lost in thought, and I would be marching along, and all of a sudden I would realize I hadn't seen a yellow arrow or a shell in a couple of kilometers, and I'd have to go back to the last place I saw one and then see which way to go. I neglected to say that I got lost on in the very third to last day. Christina and Katya took off without me, and I had to get the compass out of my pack to go west, because the whole trail is always due west, so you can always get your compass out if that helps. I had to do that towards the end of the trail. So yeah, I got lost because I would get lost in thought, and I would not look for the next yellow arrow soon enough, or the next clamshell. It's really it's a beautiful kind of treasure hunt. At least it was when I did it. Yeah. So yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing it. It was very interesting.
I should also say that I didn't do a gear list or anything, but if anybody's interested, I have a gear list, and I also have suggestions if you want to go do a Camino. Because it's gotten so crowded, there's some other ones that are really beautiful, like the Camino Norte and the Camino Aragonés. So there's other ways to go that aren't as crowded and are really gorgeous. Oh yeah, here's somebody saying, yeah, Katya, no iPhone maps. I'll bet you there are iPhone maps now. I mean, probably, right? When I was on the trail, there were flip phones, and that's what Christina had with her employer. But lots of people had the flip phones, but the older pilgrims like myself did not. We had internet cafe. Well, there weren't really internet cafes. What there were public computers at the hostels. So it was back in that day. So you'd be able to email home from a hostel if there was time, and if the computer wasn't being used. But yeah, iPhones, nope. Yeah, big change. Now when you do a Camino, everybody has an iPhone. And now when you do a Camino, people are booking their next place, in the morning on the iPhone often. So yeah.
I had a question about that too, Deb. Did you have an option to camp, or if somebody wanted to, could they carry a tent and camp along the way, or are you restricted to hostels? And then it seems like you could plan your whole trip and say, I'm going to walk this far this day, blah, 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 blah. Or could you not do that?
You can plan your trip, and you can't plan, I mean, off season, because I love off season, you end up sometimes finding a closed hostel, right? Because it's off season. Yes, you can camp, and people do, and they have to carry all the gear. Pedro, whom I didn't point out, was traveling with no money and a blanket, and he'd sort of roll up in a field, and then, hostels would take pity on him, and he could come in, and he's the person that Christina got chinches from bed fleas, which is one of the big fears in the hostels. Ugh, but that happens. That absolutely happens. So yes, you can camp. I think Mike and Sandy, I think Mike Van Note and Sandy, I think they camped when they did the Camino. Somebody will know. And I think they did it in January. I mean, you know, way tougher than what I did. But yeah. So yes, you can plan your day. But you need to be really flexible, resilience, because there's a lot of not knowing. People help you out. Go ahead.
So Deborah, Al Badgley here. Hey, I was just wondering, did you pretty much rely on all your food from the hostels? Did you carry snacks yourself? Because I just didn't know how
Yeah.
you.
Great question. Yeah, I didn't talk about that. So what you did was when you click-clacked into town tired at 5 o'clock, the first thing you did was find your bed, and then you went grocery shopping. And you either had to shop for dinner if you were cooking your own dinner in the hostel, but you were also buying snacks for the next day. So the idea is, you know, to keep your weight down. And so we carried lunch, usually, snacks. So chocolate and cheese and bread. But we would always eat breakfast in the town we were leaving. And one day I had to walk 10 kilometers for coffee in the morning. There was nothing open. So again, you never know. But yeah, so you shopped for groceries, you carried your lunch, and then you ate dinner in the town where you were sleeping, either cooking it at a hostel or going to a pilgrim restaurant, or once in a while, getting a really great meal. If you're in France, and there's a lot of really good caminos in France, the food is fabulous. It's a little more rustic in Spain, except in the big cities where you get the tapas. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You have, you know, when you're walking, we averaged, you know, 20 to 30 kilometers a day. You have a lot of time to think about what is unnecessary in your pack, and you really try to keep it down, because you get, you know, I got Achilles heel, I got sores, but you know, pack sores, you have, it hurts, and your feet get really sore, and the less is more. So now my packs are about 13 pounds, maybe.
So you didn't carry anything like, you know, a way of cooking food on the way. So pretty much all your
No.
food had to be purchased en route, and then cook, if anything, would be at the location.
At a hostel.
you stayed,
Yeah. Yeah. And that is very easy to do. I mean, it's even in more rural Spain, you will always find food. And yeah, we never, and this was October, November, mostly November. No problem. We did take first aid, Al, of course, you know, there was plenty of that. We shared all of our first aid in the hostels at night for everybody who had bad feet. And that's, I'm quick. I'm going to do a quick first aid thing that I didn't talk about. At one point, I had such a bad Achilles heel that I was limping and limping and limping. And I ended up in Pamplona, and there was a sign up for massage for pilgrims. And so I went in for a massage, and he was just massaging from sort of above the knee down. And so I'm fully dressed, and I'm up, and I'm face down on the table. My cousin is with me. She's observing. And he asked me if I'm allergic to bees. And I say no. And she observes while he takes a live bee out of a box and pulls the stinger out and acupunctures my Achilles with the bee stinger. And it was amazing, because I had about 6 weeks of relief from that bee sting acupuncture that I did have no idea I was walking into when it happened. But there's a lot that shin splints, you know, people get hurt, and they have to go off the trail, you know, they have to stop. So that's another good reason to go 15, 20 Ks or less. My next Camino, Dennis and I want to do a Camino, but I won't be walking 30K days. Okay, so Dina wants to know if I felt safe and how did I handle money? Great question. I had my, you have a debit card and you get cash as you go along, and we never had a problem finding a cash machine in the towns. So you pay, but you pay the hostels in cash. You have your passport. You don't carry too much cash at a time, and then you have to put your your passport carrier with your money under your pillow at night. So that was the caution, was to put your, you have to sleep on top of your money. So that worked. I had some underwear stolen, my Patagonia underwear. That was the only thing that was stolen. So there was very little that was stolen. And in terms of feeling safe, as a woman alone, very safe, because except when I got lost and I was by myself. But in the hostels, there's so many people, and people get really like open and kind and considerate. I mean, people are really helping each other. So, oh my gosh. Okay, so yes, I did feel safe, and I was careful with the money, but I didn't hear of anybody who had anything stolen. Sharon asks, what did you take that you didn't need? Well, that's a huge list. From this first Camino, I mean, I had my AA coin and books, and I had, changes of clothes, and I mean, all kinds of ridiculous stuff. I had a little nap blanket. I mean, all you need, and I will share my gear list with you. You get one pair of pants and 2 tops, and it's very minimal, and it's fabulous. It's fabulous to go minimal. If anybody is interested, the best Netflix film that I've seen on the Camino is called 6 Ways to Santiago by Lydia Smith. And it's a really good film because it's really accurate in terms of the blisters and the connections. And she has a vignette in there of a woman who has a pack about the size of mine. And halfway through the Camino, she buys a tiny day pack and goes forward without, with 1/4 of what she started with. I brought way too much of things I didn't need the first time. Any other questions? What's that? I think I did. What did I take that I didn't need? Yeah,
This is Cindy. I have a question.
sure.
So if you decide to like not plan and you show up in a town at 5 o'clock at night, and maybe I'm imagining you have a book that lists the hostels. I mean,
Yes.
300,000 people traveling, or 100,000 when you did it. I mean, how often do you not find a place if you,
That's a
show
great
up at
question.
5 o'clock?
So Dixie, who walked it in 02, walked it again in 10. She walked the whole Camino, but she walked it more in like September, earlier than I did. She was getting up at 4 a.m. to hike so that she could get a bed in a hostel in the early afternoon. So if you're going to be doing it during high season, then you really do have to get a really early start in order to make sure you get a bed. Now there are lots of inns. I mean, you can upgrade, which is what Katya and I did at the end. There's lots of inns. So if you have money and can pay, you can find a bed. But if you want to be in a hostel during high season, then you have to get a really early start. I think still October, November, and certainly December, January, and February and March, the Camino is not anywhere near as well traveled, that northern route. But 300,000 is a lot of people. It's a lot. And if you watch 6 Ways to Santiago, that's a recent film. There's a lot of pilgrims on the trail. Anybody else? It's so wonderful to make walking your work and see what happens. My life totally changed. Hello, Haines. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Deborah. I mean, someone can jump in if they have another question, but thank you very much. That was fascinating, and I've never done a walk like that in urban places, and thank you. That was really, really a very interesting talk.
Stuart, you have a question? Do you have a question?
Thanks,
George?
Deborah. Thanks.
Good to see you.
Good seeing you.
Yeah.
Hi, Mardell.
I know. That's such a great picture of Diz and Mardell. There she is. Yeah, the woman who's
Hey.
walked the Pacific Crest Trail.
Thanks, Deborah.
Way harder.
It was very interesting for me to compare
Yeah.
There's different issues. And when you were talking about having to get up early to find a place to sleep, it's like, oh no, I would never consider doing that. But there's some really good things and negative things about both. So
Yeah.
but I totally agree that when your world is only walking, it
Yeah.
is such a gift and freeing thing. It's very
Yeah.
nice.
Oh, yeah. It's so powerful. You don't really know, like, you have the Camino you think you're on, and the one that you do, and the one that you realize it was, after it was over, but it goes deep.
It does.
Yeah.
So that brings another question to my mind, which is, over the years, I've done some long vacations and things. And for me, I don't really start enjoying myself until I'm about 2 weeks in, which, most Americans never have the opportunity to do that more than that. So I'm wondering, from the two of you who've done much longer, hikes sort of than I have, was there a time when that it shifted, like time-wise, you're 2 weeks in, a month in, where it really made a difference, so that those of us who haven't done that know have some idea for how much longer we should make our trips?
That's a great question. You want to answer it, Mardell? Should I?
Well, I think we will give probably two different answers, because I was carrying, I started out with a 60-pound pack. It did not take me too long before I said a lot. And, but I was on a very remote trail, so I couldn't just leave it. I had to carry it for the first about week. And so it helped a lot to reduce the weight. But for me, I believe that it becomes easier and you get into the rhythm when your body gets in shape and it recognizes this is what's going to happen, and it becomes the norm. And it's no longer, your brain doesn't think, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do this. Oh my goodness, my feet hurt. This is, I think, what Deb was saying. It's what you do. It's just what you do. Like right now, I eat. I get up in the morning, and it's just a thing to do. But yeah, you realize, for me, I realized what I needed, and I cut down the weight too on my pack big time.
For me, the first week was exhilarating. And I was making these Spanish friends, and I was in Basque and wine country, and I was getting in better shape. But I have to say, for me, the hardest part was the middle of the 4 weeks. And partly it was the terrain, and it wasn't as interesting. But I definitely, things got old. I mean, the food got old, and the hostels got old, and, I had to keep myself motivated. Towards the end, of course, you're getting close to the end. So, and you are in shape. So it is easier to walk, and it is, the light is at the end of the tunnel. But I think I went through, you go through a lot of changes on that. I certainly, it took me a week to get in the rhythm, up early and get that pack packed and get that food in the evening. And, it definitely, there was an acclimation period for sure.
What great answers. I guess I think I might want to refine my question a little bit to delve a little deeper. I think what I'm wondering is about, like, the sweet spot. Is there a magic sweet spot? Because I've heard from other travelers that, like, when you're on a big trip, after 6 months, you get bored. And I'm hearing from you guys, the physical bit maybe got in the way of, you had to trying to separate the physical intrudes on the mental trip or the mental experience. So, I mean, not that there's one right answer to this, but I'm wondering if either of you had a sweet spot that, the 3rd to 4th week is the best or something like that.
Right. Well, I'm probably going to have to answer that for this trip, and it wouldn't be true for all of my long trips, that the first week had the magic, because that was where I met the people that I'm still in touch with. And of all my Caminos, those are the only people that I go back and see in Spain. So for some reason, that first week, everybody was out there for the first time on the Camino for that first week. And so it was intense and warm, and There was a lot of magic.
I think that mine was 4 months long, and so mine was a bit longer. I did not have a sweet spot. After I got over that initial, like, oh my goodness, I can't do this, and then, oh yeah, I can do it. And that was the first week and a half, probably. Apart from the days that I was low energy, it's like normal life. There were days that I was low energy. And one of the things that was very fascinating was I did this with another woman. And it was amazing. On the days that I was low energy, she would carry me through. And on the days she was low energy, I would carry her through. And it wasn't until almost hindsight that we looked at that. And so in answer to your question, Cindy, apart from those low energy days where you just kind of had to drag yourself through, but you make it through, it was a really, there was never a moment that I questioned what I was doing. It was like I was in the right place. It's what I should be doing. And I will never forget, a lifelong experience for me was in Washington. So we had come up from California. In Washington, I went through a clear cut. And I remember walking through that clear cut and likening it to the experience if somebody had come through my living room and had decimated it. And
Wow.
so it was then that I realized how much I had adopted. My home was that trail. My home was what I was doing. And
Right.
so there was a big grieving process when I finished then. And so I think my answer is that I didn't really have a particular sweet spot. The whole thing, and that sounds kind of cliche, but the whole thing really was a pretty steady experience.
Thanks. That was
Yeah,
that was
4 months
interesting to
is-
hear.
4 months and not as many people, right? I mean, the Camino, lots of people.
Yeah,
So-
we had days, and I did this in the days before the Pacific Crest Trail was popular. It's dramatically changed since then. The Cheryl Strayed
Yeah.
movie really changed things. So we would go many, many days without seeing anybody else. So it was a really different sort of experience, and
Yeah.
in being more remote and wild.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
no coffees.
No, coffees, I know. We worship the coffees. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very different, but the walking meditation has got to be similar.
The part that's intriguing to me that makes me think I would love to do the Camino is kind of the more spiritual aspect and being on the
Definitely.
trail with a lot of people for all different reasons being there. But I that's attractive to me. What's not attractive to me is all of the people being on it.
Right.
So it's been an
Right.
interesting to listen to you and about it.
You definitely off season is still, a great way to go. Yeah. Not as many people.
Well, I think we should call it the end now. Brandon's got some little ones to get home to. And anyway, thank you, everybody. And thanks, Deborah, for a great presentation.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Deborah. And again, in case anyone missed it, this will be posted to the library website under the e-learning tab by next week. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Deborah, for presenting, and Cindy, of course, for putting this on. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.